for having me. Thank you very much to the board and the sponsors and the Wells Fargo for putting this on. I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm excited to be here tomorrow to work with those of you that are going to be in the workshop tomorrow on some of the challenges that we're tackling. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. Today is about, I might not define design-based innovation per se. I'm going to try, and I'm going to share a lot of stories. And someone asked me a little bit earlier if I was ready. I said, I've got slides and I've got stories, and I'm going to try to make those slides and stories work together and make this pretty fun as well for the next, call it 30, 40 minutes, and we can do questions too. One of the things about the way that I sometimes talk is that I throw a lot of stuff at people, and some of those things stick better than others. And one of the things I was really trying to do today was to take a step back from that and say, what's the question that I think, the presenting question, if you will, that's in the room when it comes to design. And I think it's this: can design make a difference in our business? Can design make a difference in our business? And then questions follow from that. And so I'm going to try to tell a story that answers the question, can design make a difference in our business? You should know this about me before I try to answer that question. First, I'm a pragmatic optimist. Pragmatic in the sense that, I'm an engineer by training, so I'm not as theoretical. I don't think about theory as much as I try to think about application, and I try to be optimistic whenever I can, and I'm generally optimistic, but those two things go hand in hand. One thing that means is that I am willing to steal or borrow. There's a famous quote in the innovation world that if you're not stealing, you're not innovating. I do that. So you'll see other people's ideas, and I definitely believe in a lot of the other approaches that are out there. And so you'll hear that from me today. So I'm pragmatic. I'm not a trained designer. I noticed somebody who tweeted in advance, they're like, yeah, we're going to do this session and split the designer. And I was like, oh no, they're going to be so disappointed because I'm not. I didn't go to design school. And here's the thing I can say. How many people went to design school in the room? Totally respect that. You stayed up a lot later than I did. You get used really quickly in engineering school, like you're not going to pass, and somebody else is going to figure out the math or something. But I design a lot, and so I design a lot of things, and I've been able to learn a lot from the designers that I work with. And I haven't gone to school, but I've been able to pick up these approaches, which is also part of the message tonight. You don't have to go to art school necessarily to start designing things. But you should also respect the people that have those skills and find them and work with them. And I learned, actually, from Margaret coming down here today, that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,000 people involved in the creative profession within the Triad area. So not necessarily all practicing designers, but people that are involved in the creative industries. So that was really surprising to me, and that says that they're actually around us, that you guys can work with them if you so choose going forward after tonight. And I'm lucky, and I've been lucky in my career to this point, doing all this work, to generally avoid the question I just posed to you. So, can design make a difference in our business? A lot of people show up in the companies that I work for having already decided that that's the case. And so they're there for a reason. So I don't have to do too much convincing about this broad question. It's like whether we're the right approach or not might be the question. And so I've been able to avoid that or point to case studies, and I'll point you to some of those case studies. So this one is like a rare moment where I said, okay, I'm going to see if I can actually try to answer this one too. Where I came from, I worked in these companies. I went to the D school. I was at IDEO for 7 years. 5 of those were in the New York office. And what I'm doing now is 3 things. I'm working at an early stage VC firm called Collaborative Fund. And you'll see some startup and venture stuff interwoven in this talk tonight. I'll tell you about Collab in a second. And then Machine is the thing that I'm really focused on. And I teach a little bit at the School of Interaction Design. I'm not a good teacher, but I teach poor kids there who are about to graduate with a master's degree in interaction design. So Collaborative Fund. I always like to pitch Collab in case there's entrepreneurs in the room. Is there other entrepreneurs in the room? People building ventures? People that could imagine building a new venture and would seek investment? So Collaborative, this is the true story. We actually asked this question for every investment that we make, or every investment we consider making. We ask, if this company were to be wildly successful, would the world be a better and more interesting place? And if it is, if the answer to that question is yes, I mean, then we're excited about it. We've looked at a lot of businesses where maybe the answer, in our estimation, humbly saying that, is no, and we decide not to make an investment. And then the second thing is we believe, we try to invest in line with this belief, that we believe that the best investments are in companies, so we don't invest in a lot of nonprofits or anything like that, but in companies where their mission and their revenue models are aligned. So I was on the phone today with a company that's in a RevTech accelerator in Charlotte right now, where they make money when you save money. And so that's a really interesting alignment. We don't necessarily invest in other places. And that leads us to companies like this. So you probably might recognize some of these companies. We're really lucky to be in them. Kickstarter is one that a lot of people know. Maybe you're waiting on some Kickstarter projects to show up sometime soon. Good Eggs, which is a really interesting food services business where you can basically create a shopping cart from all these amazing local producers. Makers Row, there's a lot of manufacturing around here, and so Makers Row, one of the things they're trying to do is to connect designers and creators and makers to local manufacturing. And so, if you're in any of those industries, check out Makers Row. Hampton Creek, anyone heard of Hampton Creek? That might be showing up in your Safeway soon. They're now in Safeway out west, but they're replacing eggs. Their mission is to replace eggs with plant-based alternatives. And their first product is called Just Mayo, which has no eggs in it. It's pretty neat. I think they're on 60 Minutes or something recently. So we get to be in all these interesting companies. One of them is AngelList, and so I wanted to check out what are the Winston-Salem startups listed on AngelList. Not enough, guys. I think there's a real opportunity to start. If you're not using AngelList and you have a startup, start. It's a pretty interesting model. And two, and if you're thinking about starting something, let's get on with it, okay? And then Machine, we're a growth and innovation company, and basically what we try to do is to work with all of our organizations to help them think big but act small. Think big and act small. And there'll be a theme of that tonight. So we bring together design and business, insight and evidence, and then we try to work very quickly. Very quickly. And I just love this photo. I don't know where she's going, I don't know where she's been, but she's determined. And I'd never be able to ride a motorcycle. My mom will never let me, even though I'm whatever, how old I am, I'm 37 years old. But, so this is as close as I'm ever going to get. So can design make a difference in our business? So one of the things is just to look out and say, like, what do the studies say? What do the studies say? And there's studies out there as well. So maybe you've seen some of these studies. Has anyone ever seen the UK Design Council study on design and business? Yeah. So more people. So if you're interested in kind of getting this to happen in your organizations, check out some of these studies that I'm going to share with you. So they publish this thing about every year, which does a whole lot of interesting things. So like interesting studies, interesting interviews, and case studies where design is being used in organizations to create value. There's an off-cited rule of thumb statistic that they use, but some people look upon it dubiously. I'll share it with you with full accreditation to them, but they say, about 100, in this case it's pounds, 100 pounds invested in $100 invested in design leads to about $250 or pounds, sorry, in revenue growth. The way that they've seen it in the studies that they've made. Now, maybe not. It's probably exactly wrong and directionally correct. But that study has been out there from the UK Design Council. And if you look at this most recent report, and that's the cover just before, if you look at this most recent report, it's got about 15 different case studies in organizations, large organizations, UK-based organizations, and for their model, where they've teased this whole thing apart. So really detailed case studies that I think are worth checking out. Has anyone seen the recent thing put out by the Design Management Institute in a consulting firm called Motive Strategies in DC? This is an HBR. You saw that? Yeah, so this just came out. They did one of those things where they wanted to look at a sample size of companies that were design-oriented, and they compared that to the S&P. So they're trying to look at, okay, from a stock market standpoint, at least, are companies who over-investing or investing in design doing better in the market? Can they beat the market? In past lives and careers, Samsung was a big client, and they made a significant investment in design, and that's really helped them when it comes to this really hard market in consumer electronics. Now, there's a lot of suing back and forth happening right now, but if you're not stealing, you're not innovating. Do you know who said that? Steve Jobs, right? It's a classic kind of Steve Jobs thing, where it's like, you're not stealing, you're not innovating, we're suing Samsung for stealing. So this study, it's an HBR, so it passed that sort of muster. It says that, yeah, if you invest in that, you can do better than the market does. And then, there's been, I think, more of a focus on this question overall in Europe, but there's this study in terms of the finished design ROI study. And you can't see it, but I'll read it to you. Small and medium enterprises strategically using design are more than 2.5 times more likely to experience growth in demand than no growth. Whereas compare that to companies not using design at all, they're 4 times more likely to be experiencing no growth in companies that are using design strategically. And they have this model, which we'll look at a little bit closer in a second, about how and what ways organizations are integrating design. Just to preview that, it's kind of like not using design just for aesthetics, design as process, and then design as strategy. And that there's a ladder of development when it comes to businesses. So there's things that are being said and studied in the market writ large. One of the things that's sort of a paradox that comes from that UK Design Council study, I thought this was an interesting quote from the study itself. So interestingly, many interviewees emphasize that if the value of design is constantly challenged, its impact is likely to be negligible. So this is a paradox. The more design has to prove its impact, the lower that impact will be. So measure. What's not measured is not going to be improved, yet if you hold it really tightly, that you can really maybe get the exact opposite of the impact that you want. So these are large organizations, but part of what I do is also in the world of startups and ventures, right? And so just from the audience for a second, what are some of the really interesting, fast-growing startups that come to mind for you? Maybe not locally, maybe globally, nationally.
Facebook, Netflix.
Facebook, Netflix. Twitter. Instagram, Uber. Nest.
Simple.
Simple. Bake Simple, yeah. The BBVA now owns them. Yeah. So yes. And so one of the things that you'd sort of say is that if you look at the crop of the startups that are growing now, how many of them have, in some part or in whole, design at their core? How important is the design to the world of startups? And I can tell you it's extremely important. And it's not just in terms of any studies. You can look at all the activity within the venture firms in the world of startups. So on the left-hand side is my friend Dana Grayson. She's at NEA Associates, based out of DC. They just did a whole program for design founders that they ran out of New York. Design and Startup is a program we started at IDEO New York with first round capital, and it's continued, which is about basically creating communities in New York City and San Francisco in this case, talking about and connecting people that are interested in design and to take that into new ventures. A guy named John Maida, who used to be the president at RISD, has recently joined as a partner at Kleiner Perkin Caulfield Byers. They have 2 programs, a Design Fellows program, and then also an venture arm, which focuses on Design Fellows. And literally, this is this morning. So hot off the presses, I swear I create these slides for these talks. Is an announcement with a fairly well-known designer in the Bay Area joining, in this case, Coastal Ventures. And I thought this quote from here was interesting. So helping companies create well-designed products and services goes deeper than people and process. Design is a manifestation of the company's vision, value, strategy, scope, and ability to execute. To that end, I expect to work with founders and CEOs on all of these challenges. Bad design usually points to other issues that have not been resolved at a company. And that last point is like you can probably tell in some regards that things are wrong by looking at the products themselves, the services themselves, the offerings themselves, and saying what else is going on in this organization if it's not being manifested well in design itself. And I think that applies to any type of organization. You're nodding, so if you're nodding, if you believe it, I believe it. Okay, good. So speaking of, if you believe it, I believe it. If the answer is a qualified yes, then that question becomes something else for me. And that's, well, how might design make a difference in our businesses? So can design make a difference? We're going to say yeah, qualified yes. Anyone want to stop us? We're going to get to the wine faster. No? Even with that offer of wine, we're going to keep going. So how might design make a difference in our businesses? What outcomes should we expect from a well-executed design capability? So there's 3 that I'll highlight for today. So design, when at its best, does a few things. It makes things beautiful. It really does make things beautiful. And when I say that, it's not just like aesthetically beautiful. You know when you see something and it just like works? It can be something that's kind of old and mechanical and the door just clicks and it just fits. And you're like, that's nice, right? It's just nice. It's just done really well. It's like that's a beautiful thing that's been created. Design helps you make things that are beautiful. You can apply that to processes. Like when you go, there's a Bodo's Bagel store in Charlottesville, Virginia. Anyone ever been to Bodo's? The menu never changes, the process never changes. It's an amazing, efficient operation. Am I right? Brilliant, right? It's just a beautiful process. Or a culture or organization that you come to as a new employee. You say, wow, that was like the best onboarding I've ever had. Or I've never been taken out to lunch by people before, even after working in 3 years for someplace, but they took me out in the first month. It's just like, I feel so comfortable right away. That's a beautiful situation that's been created. And all those things are designed, or could be designed, if you so choose to do it. So design at its best is beautiful. It can attract and it can also evoke positive emotion. So someone mentioned where we're going with this, but what do we think about that? How many people have that in their home right now? You have one of those, right? You're the only person with heat. You're the only person with heat. Maybe, who has one of these? All right. How do you feel right now when you're looking at that finger, trying to figure out that? How do you feel? I'm stressed out. I had one that was sort of like this in my room last night. I should have just given you the picture. Right? And so this. Does anyone have a nest? You have two. How do you feel about it?
Love it.
Love it? Love it? On this side, anyone have a nest? You will. Or something like it, or something more akin to it. You will. It's a beautiful interface. It's a beautiful device. It learns about you. It works really well. And now let's try going backwards after we've looked at that. Can you imagine going backwards? You know, design when it's done well makes you say, of course that's the way things should work. That's the way things, you guys are like so into it right now. Which I get. Does anyone know what the temperature of their house is right now? Good check. So design makes things beautiful. So this is Google's gotten a lot of flack over the years for not necessarily being interested in some aspects of design, but this is a 2012 study by Google. I do a lot in the world of digital, and so this is really interesting to me. So not only will users judge websites as beautiful or not within 1/20th of a second, it's the study actually said between 1/50th and 1/20th of a second, but also that visually complex websites are consistently rated as less beautiful than their simpler counterparts. People are judging you instantly and deciding whether or not they want to engage with you. They're judging you instantly and they're deciding whether or not they want to engage with you. So if you want to grow, you want to attract new customers, you have to be able to deliver on an instant judgment oftentimes. That could be your collateral if you're in the business-to-business community. It could be the way your storefront looks. It could be how your product shows up in that product photo on Amazon. You're making these instantaneous judgments, and we're faster and faster. Think about with the interfaces themselves. It's like you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and something catches your eye, and you hit break on the iPad. Like that's the way those interactions play out. Any exceptions to this that come to mind? What about Craigslist? You were going to say that?
It's a hot mess.
It's a hot mess. It's a hot mess. It's still a pretty profitable company. And it does pretty well. And so you can also find a counter to this, right? So I want to make you like good consumers of this information, not just play the Pollyanna like it's good for everything. You know, there are situations where something that isn't as beautiful works pretty well. In fact, the brand of Craigslist has sort of become this, right? So it's also, I mean, I can imagine them sitting in a conference room. You guys can probably imagine this too, just like, should we update the design? We can't update the design. That's not Craigslist. Can you imagine that? So some experiences are so ruthless about utility, we think of them as ugly, which is part of the story here too. So design, when it's done really well, is useful. design provides utility. It provides utility. The utility can be elegant. So someone mentioned Uber. How many of you had a chance to use Uber? I tried coming down here tonight, because just like Nest, last night, just like Nest, I can't imagine going back from Uber once I've experienced it. So it's my first move when I go to any other new city to say, like, oh, is it possible for me to call an Uber driver? And I asked my driver last night, his name is Shapur, how much he had heard about Uber yet. He said, I've heard about it, I don't know if it's going to come or not, so it's in the water. Somebody that doesn't have Uber, who has never used Uber on their phone, would someone be willing to just download it for me in the meantime, as we do this talk, this next section? Try it? You'll try it? You can't call a car, but I want you to download it and try this. In fact, if you don't have Uber on your phone and you're interested in design, why not try it? You don't have to be able to take a car ride tonight to get a sense of like the way that it works. This is about what you're going to see once you download it, and it has this amazing feature that we won't even talk about tonight, where you can sort of take a picture of your card, and then you add cards that way. It's powered by this company called Card.io. But you say, I need a car, and so you request a car. You say, I'm at this location right now, and then, okay, it goes into the Uber Ether, and it checks with the drivers in the local area, and one of those drivers gets assigned to your car, and then it says, okay, I'm your driver. Let's say Shapur's on the platform now. Shapur will be in your, coming in just a second. Here's a picture of him. This is his license plate number, and he'll be there in about 5 minutes. And it texts me when he's arriving, so I can run outside, and he can call me and say, like, hey, I don't really know where your location is. And so I can say, don't worry, I'll be right down on the street, even though it'll be like another 2 minutes. We get in the car, we have an amazing ride, and I'll tell you why we have an amazing ride in a second. We get to the destination, I say, thanks a lot, Shapur, and I leave. Because my payment's already stored, there's no checkout. There's no tipping. You just leave. You just walk out. There's just no end. Because it's just simple, you don't need it. Except for this, before I can ride the next time I have to actually rate the driver. On a scale of 0 to 5 stars, I have to say how good of a job did Shapur do. The other thing that has to happen on the driver's side is he rates me. What kind of passenger was Ryan? So it kind of changes the whole conditions of taking a ride. I can't imagine going back from Uber-like experiences, so when you go to a city that doesn't have it, you notice it right away. It's dead simple, instant utility. Dead simple, instant utility. What's that?
Did you use it in Winston?
You can't use it in Winston?
I didn't think so.
No, not yet.
Charlotte has it, and I think it's coming to the Charlotte.
I'm sure it's coming. It's like the Nest. You'll take a ride soon. So this is another thing coming out of the Google side of the house, right? So one of the biggest flubs that product teams make is confusing designs that look great with designs that actually work well, right? It's a simple mistake, but it can have grave consequences. If your product doesn't work well, no one will ever care how it looks after all. True, except for what we had talked about before, which is they're going to instantly judge you on how it looks. And then they're going to instantly judge you on how it works. And then they're going to forget how beautiful it is if it doesn't make any sense. And so beautiful and useful must go together. Must go together. And then there's products, and then there's platforms. And one of the things to think about is if you need to design products or services, or whether you're trying to design platforms themselves. And one way to think about that is that when you're designing platforms, is that you're creating something that gets better and better the more you use it. So, wherever you work, whoever works with you right now, like, does it get better and better, the interaction, the more they work with you, the more they buy from you? If not, there's an opportunity. And so Google Drive is a good example of that. It's simple, it's pretty beautiful, and the more and more I have with Google Drive, the more and more useful it becomes to me. I can access my files anywhere really easily. So what about Craigslist? Right? Said, well, it's the brand itself. Here's a chart that shows all the companies that are going after elements of Craigslist right now. And a good number of them are going after them with utility and beauty. So even our, darling Craigslist is not immune to the competition coming in with great design. Do you feel nostalgic for the classified ads of the local paper? I don't think you'll feel nostalgic for Craigslist if you have something that's better. Design also simplifies. Design simplifies, it creates elegant solutions. And so when you do a talk like this, when you never answer this question, you realize why everyone uses Apple examples all the time. So how many of you seen this chart or read this story about Steve Jobs after he left Apple and he came back? Above the line was the product line that Apple had. And he came and this isn't exactly there, so I think 2 of each choice within the category. He said, all this other stuff is going away. We're going to do these things very well. We're going to do these things very well. And there's a lot of really important reasons for that. You want to make amazing products and services. And then, you know, that quote from the woman a little bit earlier who's joining Coastal Ventures, it's like you can kind of tell what's wrong with that company based on how things are designed. Well, there's a reason for it. It's a symptom. There's other things that are messed up about how these products and services are getting offered that's manifesting all these choices. So this is from Johnny Ive, an interview with him. We wanted to get rid of everything other than what was absolutely essential. To do so required total collaboration between the designers, the product developers, the engineers, and the manufacturing team. We kept going back to the beginning again and again. Do we need that part? Can we get it to perform the function of the other 4 parts? So at one point, the MacBook, when they relaunched the MacBook with those beautiful aluminum cases, they were doing some of that manufacturing with just the minimal number of parts. And the only way you can do that is if you take this holistic approach when it comes to design. I can't say it's the only way you can do that, but it certainly helps. It certainly helps if you take that approach. And that saves millions and millions upon millions of dollars, not just in materials, but also all the other complexity in the supply chain. And they've got that imbued right from the start. I don't think these are all scanned in. This is the only way you can get these images. This is the first ad for Apple II. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. It's simple so we can focus on what matters most, not only to our organization, but also to our customers. So there was a study by Bain. Accenture's been doing this a lot too. Anybody from Bain or Accenture in the room? Good. I think Bain did it first, study, but I think Accenture's talking about it the most these days. I wasn't going to say that if somebody was in the room. People are like, no, that's not true. How many of you guys have been to California? How many of you guys have been to In-N-Out in California? Cheeseburger place. Yeah, it's usually a pretty high overlap. Even some of the vegetarians go to In-N-Out. Because you can make something work there. So this is the In-N-Out menu. This is the In-N-Out menu. What do you notice about it? Simple, right? We're in that part of the presentation, so I guess it's a softball question. And this is the way that they talk about it in this Bain study, and Mark Gottfredson is one of the authors. So 4 is In-N-Out's innovation fulcrum. They define this idea. There's this fulcrum in terms of product complexity. You should check out the article if you're interested in that. But the point at which the number of products strikes the right balance between customer satisfaction and operating complexity. 4 for them means simple purchasing, simple production, and simple service. So by doing really great design for our customers and being simple about that, we can actually be making improvements in the supply chain itself. And so I'm starting to foreshadow like how we're going to get people to do this with us in our organizations. It also wants to be simple enough so people know intuitively what to do with your product and service. So you knew what to do with Uber, you will know what to do with Uber once you download it. It's pretty well designed. The new design maybe lost some of that complexity, and you got to watch out with these versions where you keep on adding features. A friend of mine named Matan Griffel, he analyzed fast-growing companies that rely on sign-up pages. And he did this on a, it's pretty simple, right?
No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. That rely on sign-up pages for their businesses. So things like Dropbox. Like, I need you to sign up for a service. And what he saw really quickly is the most simple sign-up pages are the ones that perform the best, period. Right? And so the good ones had none of these things. They didn't have access. They had no access without sign-up. So you can't get the benefit, the utility without signing up, because it's really important that you do sign up. Navigation and hyperlinks were almost always absent. So it's not like you're going to browse away from anything here. There's a focus on a single, clear value proposition. You know exactly what you're going to get. So for Dropbox, you know what you're going to get. They didn't try to get shares, right? They didn't say like, hey, tell your friends about Dropbox. Like, here, I'm trying to get you to sign up with my service, so I'm asking you to do some work for me too now, right? Like, there's just like a lot of cognitive overload, and wait, I haven't decided if I liked you yet. Why would I do any work for you? Big images always work really well. There's tons and tons of things that show to that, and the sign-up form themselves are embedded right in the page. You don't have to go anywhere else to get it. So generalizing that for a second, like how easy is it for people to sign up with you, to get on board, to buy from you? And what can you do to make that easier? The things that make things easier and easier. My friend Russell Davies, he moved back to the UK. He's been working for the government government digital services. So their mission is to make all the government websites better. And if you want to check out some amazing design principles, go check out the GDS design principles. They list them and they have examples of everything that they're doing. It's a great thing about being a government. We can all learn from that, from the government of a different country. Except for the Brits that are here, and I know there's a few, and I've met a few of you already. Thank you. And Russell and these guys are doing some really amazing things, and they illustrate them. One of the things is like getting people the information that they actually want. And so there's a case study that they talk about, which is there's a listing somewhere for their bank holidays, their national holidays. And so before you have a big long tabular list of all the holidays, and you have to like look and now we Google it, like when is, or whatever. What they realize is that what most people want when they come to that page is when's the next one. So let me just, Summer Bank Holiday, 27th of August, that's the next one that's going to happen. Right? So just get them to the information that they want right away. So those are some of the outcomes that we want to see if we're doing design and design well. Right? It's beautiful, it's simplifying, and it's useful. So what approaches can we use to get there? In essence, this is the process that, how many people are going to be in the workshop tomorrow? We'll be playing with a version of this process tomorrow. There's empathy and inspiration, synthesis and strategy, designing and building things, and scaling and growing them. In principle, what this means is start with needs, frame the problem, have many ideas, and prototype and experiment. I'm trying to eat my own dog food as this principle in this presentation, right? So in action, what am I really talking about? I want you to develop strategic insight into who your customers are. And then I want a prototype to translate that insight into action as quickly as possible. So the definition for me is develop strategic insight into where your customer is, what they need. And then prototype as quickly as you can to translate that insight into action. And if we do that, and we develop that habit, then we're going to be doing better and better design. Work with really talented designers, and they're going to help you keep it beautiful, they're going to help you keep it simple, they're going to help you keep it useful. So what does this look like? One, developing strategic insight. First, you have to fall in love with your customer. You have to love them. Love them, love them, love them. If you don't love them, and I was saying this at lunch today, if you don't love them, you should quit trying to help them. You have to love them. My wife's amazing at this. She's a brand marketer. She loves her customer. She loves them. She loves her Bailey's customer. She loves her Johnny Walker customer. She loves her L1 customer. And when she's doing one of those brands, she loves that customer more than anybody else in the world. It's an amazing, amazing thing to witness. So who here? That's sometimes I mess up homonyms. Is that what they're called? Anyway, let's not look at that for a second. So who here knows their customer? Who here really knows their customer? Who here really, really knows their customer? You do? Tell me about your customer. Yeah. You're about the only hand left.
They are a university client and they know what they want.
They're a university client and they know what they want.
For the most part, yeah.
So what kind of university client?
UNC.
They're UNC? So UNC is the customer?
Yeah.
The Tar Heels, all of them.
It's the business school.
The business school within UNC, the Keenan Flagler Business School. Is there a person there?
Yes.
And you don't have to say too much about this person, but like what motivates them?
Financial.
Financials? Making the money. Why are they so interested in financials? Because they're business school? Because they work at a business school. You think that's why they're motivated to hit the numbers?
I think he loves what he does too.
But what does he love? Why does he love what he does?
Students.
The students?
And he loves their brand.
He loves the brand of Keenan Flagler?
He's into UNC and sports and the whole atmosphere.
He lives that whole brand
Yes.
and everything that he does. What does that translate to into his behaviors with you?
Very passionate.
Very passionate, always wants to put up numbers and wants to continue to pursue branding in the design, whether it's little or.
So you always want to tie things back to the numbers for this gentleman. Gentleman?
And then the design has to make financial sense.
Design has to make financial sense. And he loves the brand. He loves the whole institution of... Anyone else? Yes.
My customer is a lawyer,
A lawyer.
right? She is passionate about the environment and has just gone back to study at the University of Vermont.
What does she need?
Environmental law.
What does she need?
What does she need from me? She needs, well, what does she need?
What does she need generally?
What she needs is,
All we need is love. I heard it.
yeah, just really support and affirmation.
Support and affirmation.
She takes a stand in a way that's not popular.
So she probably needs energy and sustenance. And
She does.
when she's backstage, she needs a little bit of a boost.
She does, and she does what she does because of her children.
Because of her children.
She wants them to have a planet, an environment, a home to live in 20 years.
Hmm. There's a lot we can learn really quickly about who our customers are. And for those of you who didn't raise your hand, like start there. And don't make that a big research project. Don't do that. Like just as quickly as you can, start asking questions about who this customer is and what they need. You know, I think about this in terms of discovering insight, right? So it's a fundamental understanding of people. It's a fundamental understanding of people when it comes to the customer insights. Emotion and utility are coming into play. You're considering things like context. Would anything change for your UNC client if they were at a school, let's say in Charlottesville, Virginia? Right? So context matters. Motivations, like what is it that's motivating them? And then behavior, what are they doing as a result? And what do they think they're doing? And good ones, you discover them. And so that's really important. It's like you should feel like you're making a discovery. You're discovering, because if you give me something from Wikipedia, it's not really a strategic customer insight. You know, like, tell me something about like behavioral economics and how we fool ourselves with the way that we make decisions. Totally. That applies to everybody, but you're looking for strategic customer insights that are going to help you unlock growth and do things in a differentiated way. Like, why is it appropriate for us? Why is it appropriate for our brand when we interact with these customers? They're going to set you apart. It's going to get you so excited that you got to do something about it. You have to help them, and it helps unlock growth. You do this by going out there and spending time with people. You can go really deep. This is a project with an e-commerce retailer, and we're talking about clothes. This is a great project for me. And the reason it was a great project for me is I know nothing about the environment that I'm walking into, so I ask a ton of dumb questions. I didn't know there's a difference between out and out. There's out.
What you wear when you go out versus when you go out.
Yeah, you knew what that thing was, right? How many people understood what out and out were? You knew, right? You guys knew. I had no idea what that was. You get up, right, for out. And there's a difference, once again, for out. Yeah, because you don't get to do it as much as we should. Out. And you get this because you're going deep and you're going deep really quickly. One of the key insights that unlock growth for us in this one is about out, out, out. So an occasion is a reason to either buy something that you weren't going to buy or to splurge. It makes a ton of sense when you say it, right? It's like a blinding glimpse of the bleeding obvious of guy I used to work with used to say all the time, right? But this is what it feels like, which is like, let's say you're in the wedding party, you've got to wear that dress or something like the dress that they gave you on Saturday. What does that mean for what you're going to wear on Friday night? It means you're going to win. You're going to win the rehearsal dinner. Because you're not going to win Saturday. It's not your day, so that means we're all playing for keeps on Friday night. Right? It's true. It's true. And that can help me and this client unlock growth. I can do something with that. You can do it yourself over and over. This is a really embarrassing picture, and that's why I share it. This is at the end of my first 4-mile run when I was doing a project about running and runners. And I wanted to remember what it felt like and how bad I looked and share that with others. And I'm glad that, there's no stuff coming out of my face or anything like that. But I was like, this sucks. And one of the things is that you can fall into the pattern and the trap of believing that you're an expert because you've been in the industry for a long time. You should go have that experience for yourself firsthand. Like you're doing it for the first time, you do it over and over and over again. I got fitted for shoes, not shitted for shoes, about 12 times in this project. Because I was trying to understand how is it that I was getting these running shoes prescribed to me by 18-year-old running store clerks. And there's something there, right? You're just trying to understand what it was. And you want to keep on asking why. We started to play around with this a little bit, and thank you for playing along with your clients and with me a little bit. But like why? Like why? So the 5 whys is a technique that people talk about. Other people sort of refer to this as like my 8-year-old kid use that strategy. And you want to fall in love with the problem. So you fall in love with your customer, now you want to fall in love with the problem, not necessarily the solution, but the problem itself. And many of us are going to be working on this tomorrow. And we're going to spend a lot of time coming up with crisp definitions of the problem. But we're not going to do that in absence of action. We're going to define the problem, and we're going to do some action, and then we're going to think about that problem again, and redefine it, and we're going to do some more things, and we're going to redefine that problem again. Because that's something that gets crisper and crisper over time, and it gets better and better over time with the more action that you take. Because you should be prototyping to translate that insight into action. We're going to take these hunches that you have and make those into prototypes. And so one of my favorite definitions of prototypes is a guy I used to work with named Diego Rodriguez. He said it's a question embodied. I have a question about what it would feel like if your client all of a sudden got a new job in Charlottesville, Virginia. And so I'm going to create a prototype to get that answered. How important is his environment of UNC, Keenan Flagler, to like the way that we're interacting? I don't know, it might not be the prototype to create, but what prototype could help me get that question answered? That's what prototyping is for. And design basically can help you learn. So these are these provocations that we use in the context of the research itself. So we'll create a lot of these like really kind of dumb, iconic concepts and put them in front of people just to get their reactions. And being wrong is as helpful as being right when you do this. We are wrong on purpose. If you put something that's okay in front of somebody, they're like, that's all right. If you put something in front of them that's really dialed up, in terms of its contrast, they can't wait to tell you how much they love it or how much they hate it. Don't just catch up on the news. Finish it. Did you guys like that idea? How many of you finished the news? You do. Does it feel like it's a big stack of things weighing you down? No, not anymore, does it? And so we had this question around like how much did completion matter in the news thing. And some of the team members thought that was like that's where we want to go. And some other people were like, no, that's not where we should go. And so you can start having a fight about that in the team room, or you can create a prototype and put it in front of people and watch reactions. And so prototypes actually, one of the benefits for you is it actually drives a ton of alignment within organizations. And you should be investing the least to learn the most. So lots and lots and lots of concepts. Lots and lots and lots of concepts. Mixed resolution. There's things on here that you can't do. that a trained graphic designer can do. There's things on this wall that everybody in this room can draw. That's one of the reasons I like this, is because it's a real project room. We're working on some of these concepts. And our graphic designer can do stuff that I can't do. And I'm probably a worse illustrator than most of you guys. You want to pair that insight with experimentation. You want to think experimentally. So back to that e-commerce platform, our shopper, she didn't, like the flash sale model, you know, it was invented with like noon in mind. So you're at your office desk, the noon bell goes off and says, we've got a new thing, get there really quickly before we run out. Well, our ladies, they weren't shopping then. They were shopping at 10 o'clock when they finally like got their kids, well 10 o'clock was a little late, for some of them it was probably that late, but their kids are to bed, their husband finally shut up, right, or like safely ensconced in the corner, and they're like, finally, I can do something for me. And we're like, well, what is, like, we have a hunch, I have a hunch, that if I actually ran sales that started and ended in the 10 o'clock to 2 a.m. window, that we actually could get incremental growth. I've got a hunch about that. And so you could be like, that's a good idea or a bad idea. You could start arguing about it, or you could say, you know what, that's really interesting. How quickly can you find out if that's the case? Investing leads to learn the most. How fast could you bring me back evidence that would show me that that was something to continue to invest in? Because you want to invest in progress, not ideas. One of the worst things that have happened to corporate America in the world of innovation, I've decided in the last 10 seconds, is idea suggestion box systems. We want all your ideas. Ideas can come from anywhere. Give us your ideas. Thank you for all of these ideas. Now what? Now what? So let's say you're in charge of a program like that. Somebody walks in your office and shows up and they say, I got this great idea. They tell you about this idea. They walk out and they left it on your desk. And then out in the hall, they're like, I can't figure out why they don't invest in my ideas. And they ask for ideas all the time. I give them to them. They don't do anything with them. That's not the way it should work. The way it should work is that you should be investing in progress, not ideas. So that's a really interesting idea. I want you to go out and see if you can actually do something with it. This is from, if you've read The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, they talk about this case study. This is SnapTax by Intuit. Intuit's an organization that's doing this all very well. A good friend of mine is a guy named Lionel that used to work at IDEO. He's been part of like a lot of these processes. And they've learned over time that it's, I'm going to share some of his lessons here in a second. But SnapTax, a team showed up and said, it should be as easy to submit your taxes as taking a picture. That if you have a 1040 EZ form, I should just be able to take a picture of that and be done. That's a highly disruptive idea in a world, in a company that makes a lot of money selling TurboTax. That's the first thing you should notice. The second thing is like, yeah, it would be great if I could take a picture of my taxes and be done with it, right? If I have a 1040 EZ. So the management, to their credit, is like, yeah, that's kind of interesting, but we don't want to kill that. It seems hard to do the OCR though. We could just stop and go home and say the optical character recognition is going to be really hard. And there's all these different state forms and stuff. I don't think we could do it. We could stop it. And what they said is, take a week, take 2 weeks, prove to me that you could take a picture of a 1040 EZ and read what's on the form. The team's like, okay. Came back in 2 weeks. Maybe it was 2.5, maybe it was a week and a half, who knows, and said, watch this. Okay, that's interesting. Well, what's the next question we have? And what's the least amount that I can invest to get that next question answered? Go make some more progress. I'll give you more time, more money. It's not about investing in ideas, it's about investing in progress. And so if you're interested in people taking your ideas, don't bring them ideas, bring them progress. There's a really great thing that you can watch online. This is Karen Hansen. She's the VP of Design Innovation at Intuit. And she talks all about, she does a talk at the Bright Conference in 2012, I think. It's on YouTube. I can give you the link. This is a snapshot from that talk. One of the things she talks about is like developing this culture of experimentation. Our hit rate isn't significantly different, but because it is so much cheaper and faster, we can run basically 50 different ideas through our new machine. In the meantime, the time it took in resources to run 3 ideas using the old way. It's not about making the hit rate better. It's about investing less resources to find the hits. And this is the chart from her talk where she showed the old way on the left-hand side, all this money they invested in all these things, and then the new way, the amount they invested versus the amount that they had gotten from that. But we're getting super lean in our approach, and so design can help you be lean in that way. Okay, almost done, guys. So the question then becomes, well, how do I influence others to do this stuff that you're talking about? And how do I think about developing capabilities within an organization over time? And so you'd seen a non-graphical version of this a little bit earlier, but this is that finished design model, which I think works. No design, design is styling, design is process, and design is strategy. One of the things I would say is don't try to skip to the top. I think as creative professionals, sometimes you're like, hey, I want a seat at the table, which means I want to come at it this way, and that's what the startups are doing. They're actually coming at it that way. But you gotta find a way to climb to that next level, probably. So these are the ways that I would think about that. Just don't make them invest. Do stuff in a radically cheaper way. Cut a zero from the budget. When they tell you, hey, I want to give you $1,000 to do it, say, I'm going to do it $100. People will start coming back. Bring them options, not an idea. So bring them options. There's nothing more fun in the world as like a really smart business leader to be the one that chooses. Bring them one idea, they'll tell you what's wrong with it. Bring them 3 ideas, they'll help you choose the right one to keep going on. Trick, pro tip, if you want people to talk about the ideas but not really make choices, use an even number. If you want to make choices, use an odd number. Pro tip. It just works. I've got these 4 ideas and I want to talk about them today. I have these 3 ideas and I want to talk about them today. In our Western culture, you're like, well, let's choose one. Just the way it works. You want to think about how to move their needles. And all the stuff that we do is around growth, but like what business outcomes are we going to give them? You want to move their needles in the work that we do, and you want to bring them progress, not ideas. So we started looking into the needs of our clients in the legal profession, and oh, that's interesting. Like, I don't really have budget for a big research project, you know. Oh yeah, that's okay. We already did that on our own, and we had some ideas. Oh, I'm not so sure. We should do a little research before we come up with ideas. Well, actually, I have 4 ideas that I want to show you. Okay, all right. Well, let me get the cleaver out. But before I tell you that, I want to tell you about the ones I'm really excited by because we have a little bit of evidence about how the traction came into play for those ideas themselves. It's just a different conversation. So if you can, get to evidence, bring back evidence, and do it more effectively. Okay, the last thing I'll say before we do Q&A or drink wine is that with a lot of this stuff, you know, I think our desire is to say, like, I want to introduce this process within an organization. I want people to adopt this process that I'm using, design thinking. The challenge with that, going back to that chart about like rolling things out, is like everyone's got a process that someone's trying to get everybody else to use. There's a lot of process bloat. And what I've found is that you want to invest in progress, not ideas, and what you want to scale is principles, not process. Principles are simpler. And I want to scale the principles themselves, not the process. Right? So here's a great example. If you want to watch something fun, this is like Jeff Bezos in his driveway the day after. This is how I imagine him. I imagine him wearing slippers underneath. He's wearing big bunny slippers in my head that he just got on Zappos. This is the day after they bought Zappos, and he's explaining why in the world Amazon would have spent this money on Zappos that people are kind of familiar with but aren't. And he said, look, these are our principles. We obsess over customers, we invent, we think long term, and it's always day one. There's no nostalgia. We're going forward all the time. And everyone who ever sits around with Jeff Bezos or reads a memo from him, so if you read the memo when he bought the Washington Post, about 2 paragraphs in, maybe the second or third graph, he basically hits all these principles and why he talks about like, what's going to happen with the Washington Post. He says them over and over and over again. You understand from a principle standpoint the way we work. Similarly at Intuit, you can, if you watch the video, get the principles that they're going to convey, which is like, we're going to spend time with customers, we're going to have many ideas, and we're going to have cultures of experimentation. That's the way we work. How you do that? Like, we can help you, but as long as you're basically adhering to those principles, no one's going to get mad. And so if you're looking to make this transformation, think about what these principles are and try to scale the principles before you scale, or instead of scaling the process. Thank you.
have faced some very, very embedded interests
Right.
that are really trying to stifle that. Uber, you know.
Airbnb is another example.
Yeah, Airbnb is another huge example, of course, hotels, innkeepers, and stuff like that. What advice would you give to clients that face very rigid, sort of embedded structures where you have this obstacle between a company that knows what people want, the customers that want what the company's selling, but this, you know, these rules and legislation that are really trying to do their best to keep that down?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I want to be careful about sounding flip here, but I might sound a little bit flip. And it's in particular around like medical regulations. I know those are really hard, and I don't know that industry well enough to know whether my flip comments should be offered even more carefully in that industry. But there's really something around like, I find people wrap themselves in the regulatory challenge as a substitute for doing a lot of things. And that it's really, if that's the first reason, like share it with a regulator before you tell me that. Bring me back some evidence that that's not gonna, that we can't actually get a regulator to maybe get on board with what we're doing. Because we're like, there's a great definition of anxiety, which is experiencing failure in advance. I think Seth Godin said that, experiencing anxiety in advance. I mean, a lot of times regulations are sort of a proxy for experiencing failure in advance. So if we can, it'd be great to like figure out if that's really true with the regulator. So what if we hop on the phone with one of our regulators and show them 4 concepts of things that we're thinking about doing and getting their input on that and say, you know what, concept 1, clearly illegal. I'll pretend like you didn't call me with that one, but 3, I'm not so sure. There could be something interesting there, and if you tweaked it this other way, what would you do? If you can get the conversations like that, and I've seen it happen before, that's sometimes helpful. But the incumbents, the strategy of the incumbents, and I think there's just a piece about this maybe in the Journal or the Times or something, because of this Attorney General thing's happening with Airbnb. Airbnb, over the course of 6 years, they're in like 192 countries. They're doing on their own revenue, a couple $100 million. They have basically more room nights than, certainly more than Marriott, probably approaching Hilton, and they're maybe like the 3rd number of room nights right now globally. And so there's a lot of entrenched interests that really want this to stop, right? The strategy in some regards in some of those markets is to move so fast and to mobilize a community so quickly that the regulators are basically going to be revolted against by their local communities because it's such a better option. And it's a risky strategy, but if you can grow it fast enough, it might work. And I think that's what we're seeing a little bit happen with Airbnb and with Lyft, and Tesla's a little bit of a different case. But I'm sure people are going to be driving over state lines to get themselves a Tesla. If you can afford the Teslas right now, at least you could probably borrow somebody's plane or something like that. I mean, when they're more approachable as a price point, I think that's a little bit of a harder one. When they're more approachable and you have like basically the people are rising up saying, I'd like a Tesla, please, because it's a better solution. I think that would be probably the case. So I don't know easy answer, of course. But like, okay, like, is the evidence really there? But I see it as a roadblock that's thrown up far more often than the prototypes would suggest. Another question? One more question? 2 more questions? Yeah.
I have a devil's advocate question.
Oh, okay.
If you're not purely a startup, you're already part of an existing business, maybe you have a handful of clients, you've already launched products, whatever it might be. You mentioned quantity of ideas, lopping off of 0, all those sorts of things, and I believe wholeheartedly in that. The devil's advocate part comes from, do you think we're in a race to the bottom and getting paid?
Do I feel like we're in a race to the bottom?
Meaning if all of us act as lean as a startup, do we eventually reach a threshold where we can't get paid?
I hope so. Did you say I hope so?
I do think there are challenges in the labor market, and so being an investor at Collaborative Fund, we look at a lot of models that are in the recession were really great ways for people to get a little bit of money when they couldn't get a lot of money in some other great job. And so, like, but that maybe if that's what the industry becomes, and that's the only options available to people, then we're in trouble. And so there was one of the projects at the New York Times called The Upshot that launched today, and David Leonhardt's first post was about, in America, the middle class is basically, if you wanted to judge America's competitiveness by the middle class, we're like in 10th or 11th or 12th place or something globally. Basically, it's like the middle class is the worst in any developed country. Everybody's got us edged out, and I think that's a shame, and I don't think that's good. But I also believe in the fact that there are ways as creative entrepreneurs for us to create things that don't exist and to create value in such a way that we will get paid. I don't know industry structure. I don't believe that I can rely on a large organization to give me a pension.
Right.
I don't think that that's available to me. I mean, I think I could get a job at a big company, but I think it's a drastically different employment situation than it was 30 or 40 years ago. Weird thing is that a lot of talented people coming out of undergrad don't even understand why they would want to do that anyway. It's like the world is just shifted. It's like, I don't know, like I'll be here for like a year and you'll say thank you and then I'll go off and do something cool after this. Right? And so like that's actually kind of programmed in. I'm more concerned about like the lack of general education within the folks that are meant to drive the middle class as a country. So, I'm long on education, and if we can find a way to get people skilled up in some of these areas, I don't think it'll be a fix to the problem. But if we don't do that, I think, I'm no macroeconomics person. I'm probably not qualified to say this, but I think we're certainly at risk if we don't get going. Somebody has to ask a question that ends in an optimistic tone. Because I believe we can do it, though. I'm a pragmatic optimist. I think what it's going to take is actually creating these jobs, creating these services, creating these products, doing it on our own time, digging in and doing it, not waiting for anybody else to show up with basically what the answer is. How about that?
And on that note, great optimism.